No, man. You got it all wrong. Look, no. I understand where you're coming from with this, but listen to me. Just hear me out here. Look, if nobody could read, the mailman would have to start delivering milk. Man. No. Seriously, think about this for a moment. Oh, hey, everybody. We'll circle back to this in a moment, okay? Hey, everybody. This is TJR. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. And the other day, Robert Kinsler alerted me to a new music store that had just opened up in the city of Orange here in Southern California called Left of the Dial Records. And so I decided to pay it a little visit. And I ended up spending a little bit more than probably I should have and basically buying a little vintage vinyl haul, which I'm going to share with you right now. Before I do, though, I want to call your attention to the following here. Hey, everybody. Sorry about that. Superfan showed up to the door. You were hanging out with Pirates, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yep. Had to help her bring in her spoils. And so we're going to go ahead now and show you the vintage vinyl haul. But before we do, I just want to first show you the following here. This is another one of those Target clearance sales pickups that I got the other day. Probably the last one I'll be able to get. And this was about $8. It's the second album by Robert Plant and Alison Krauss. And it's entitled Raise the Roof. And, $8, I figured, okay, I'll pick it up, check it out. I have to admit, the first one that was called Raising Sand, I listened to it and I thought, it's all right. It's fine. Kind of easy listening, maybe a little too easy listening for me. This one, however, though, I haven't heard the whole thing yet, but I started listening to it while I was setting up for this video and I was pretty impressed with what I heard so far. It's, to me, a lot stronger. I'm not going to say it's like Zeppelin-esque, but it's stronger. It just had a lot more force and power, what I heard. So yeah, if you haven't heard this one yet, give it a listen. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, this was from last year. So I'm just kind of catching up to that one. So now let's look at the vintage vinyl haul. And the first one here, speaking of Robert Plant, is Shaken and Stirred by Robert Plant. This is, or was, his third album. And I kind of have been thinking for a while that I might do a video about this album. When a lot of people, or either I should say a while back, I did a video where I discussed his first solo album and Pictures at 11. And I thought that was his most Zeppelin sounding of all his solo albums. A lot of people commented that they felt the second one, Principle of Moments, was the best of his solo albums. And I'll admit, it was definitely stronger than the first one. But in my humble opinion, this third album is a personal favorite of mine. I'm not going to say it's necessarily better than Principle of Moments, but I will say that it's a real favorite. I think it's highly underrated. And it's at least just as good, if not better. And he got a lot of criticism for this album, and I know a lot of people in the comments have said they just didn't get this one or understand it. I really feel that with this album, Robert Plant, he met the 80s head on, but he did it on his own terms. So this was a really clean copy. And that's something I will also say. In every case, whenever I picked up a record at the store, first of all, they were all in plastic sleeves. Oftentimes, he'd have the year that it was released on the plastic sleeve. In case had been re-releases, he'd put the year on there, the owner of the store. In some cases, I remember I saw a couple copies of Led Zeppelin 2, and they would say things like, and this was all written on these plastic sleeves, it would say like, first Monarch pressing, second pressing, just so you could know, without having to ask, what pressing it was, if it was important to know. I appreciated that. This store was mostly all used records, a little bit of new, but he told me were mostly about the old records here. And that weekend he was doing 20% off all used records. So that was incentive to certainly probably pick up more than I might have regularly. So Shaken and Stirred, Robert Plant's third solo album. Next, another one that I initially got on vinyl, then later got rid of it, got it on CD, getting it on vinyl again now. Boston, Third Stage. Their third album came out in the mid 80s, and this one here, of course, had the hit single Amanda. It was amazing that Boston could have a hit in the 80s, and I'll show you the inner sleeve here with the lyrics, the band logo. And this album, probably, in my opinion, their best album since the first album. The first album and this album being the strongest. And looking forward to, probably doing a CD versus vinyl on this one here, since I've had this one on CD for quite a while. And there we go. Now next, this is one, initially I did own this one on vinyl way back in the day, back in the 70s. Once again, let it go once CDs came along, and glad to get it again here. This is Heart, Dog and Butterfly. And of course, this is part of a string of albums that Heart did in the 70s that were just fantastic. There we go. Once I clean this record, I'll put it in an anti-static sleeve. This album, for me, will always be, to me, their strongest, simply because it has the song Minstrel Wind. To me, Minstrel Wind is Heart's Stairway to Heaven. Probably one of their most epic, best songs ever. And also, I'm not pulling out the vinyl on these here, but they were all really clean when I looked at them. In fact, I remember with the Boston album, the owner telling me that that particular record belonged to a collector. He bought the guy's entire collection. Apparently, all he did was when he got his records, he taped them onto cassette, and then he put the albums away and pretty much never pulled them out. And when I looked at how clean that copy was in the store, I believed him, And that is pretty much par for the course with all of these here. This next one is also one that I did have on vinyl for a long, long time. The Tubes. And this one, I'm not sure why, but even after I started getting CDs and getting rid of my albums, for some reason, I held on to this copy. I'm not sure why, because it wasn't like, I like the album, it's a good album, but it's not like I had some personal sentiment or attachment to it that I wouldn't get rid of it like all the others. But I finally did get rid of it when I bought my first post-CD era turntable, which was a Sony USB turntable, which I got specifically so that I could finally rip albums that I couldn't find on CD and finally get rid of those records. Little did I realize that doing that would slowly put me back on the path to getting vinyl again. So yeah, because this album was available on CD, so I'm not sure why I held on to it for all that time. I don't quite understand that anymore, but I wanted to get it again. It was funny. For a long time, I couldn't play this record, even though I had it, because I didn't have a turntable to play it on. When I finally did rip it, I immediately got rid of it, started listening to my rip of it, and thought, wow, this sounds really good. And it was very clean. But I wanted to have it back again. The copy I had, I don't remember this little poster here, this fold-out poster, but this came with it here, lyric sheet. So my copy didn't have this. I probably picked up my copy used. Even back then, I was all about getting used records and then later used CDs because it was just a lot cheaper way to go. This particular album, the store had about like 5 different copies of this album, all priced differently. Some at like $15.99, some at like $9.99. I think there was even one that was priced less. And I looked at each one because I was curious to know why is one price lower, one higher. In some cases, it was because of the condition of the cover, or the condition of the inserts, or the fact that maybe it didn't have the inserts. You know, maybe the sleeve instead of the original sleeve was just a plain sleeve that was just tossed in. This was one of the lower priced ones, not the lowest price, I don't think, but it was definitely one of the lower priced ones. But what convinced me to get this was the fact that just the record looked as clean as the higher priced one that was maybe in nicer physical condition as far as the cover and the inserts were concerned. And to me, having the cleaner, you know, as long as the record's really clean, the packaging is not as important. I mean, it's nice to have, but it's secondary to the vinyl being super clean. And it definitely was. So I picked up this one. It's good to have it again. It's probably going to sound at least as good as the rip that I already have. Maybe, who knows, maybe even a little better. We'll see. Next, an 80s album. This one, still in it's got its shrink wrap on it. I'll probably just take that off. But it is Andy Taylor, Thunder. I used to have this album. I still have it, I should say. Have it on CD. But I think I originally did pick it up as a used record during the 80s, probably because it was super cheap. And I still had a turntable at that point. And then, of course, later on, just got rid of it and got the CD. But let me pull out the sleeve here. There we go.
And we should say, being where we are in Southern California, we're not far from LA. There were a lot of places back in the day that you could go.
Yeah. There were so many places, and we didn't have to go to LA. You could go to Pasadena.
Yeah.
There were so many places you could go to where you'd find stores that were loaded with used CDs and used records for like super cheap.
Or cutout records.
Yeah, or cutout records.
You know, promo copies.
And oftentimes,
The
yeah.
industry is here.
I just picked them up just so I could check them out. You have to remember there was no streaming or YouTube or any of that. And so I might just pick up a super cheap record just so I could check it out and listen to it. And then if I really liked it, maybe I'd go get it on CD. It just depended on the prices at the time and what I thought of it at the time. You know, eventually, of course, I would just get everything on CD and just eventually just get rid of the records, get rid of the turntable. And it was just CDs for a long time. But this was, as far as I know, his only solo album. This was after the Power Station album. And I remember when I first saw Power Station on MTV, I knew that it had the bass player and the guitars from Duran Duran. I was not that into Duran Duran back then. And I remember watching and thinking, oh my gosh, he's rocking out. He really can play guitar well. And I remember also, it was the bass player. Was it John Taylor, the bass player?
Yeah.
John Taylor said to him, before Power Station, said, you know, you're really underused in this band. And that was part of why they got Power Station together. And I remember really liking Power Station. Now, of course, years later, I would listen to Andy Taylor's work with Duran Duran, and he was a very textural guitarist. And I like textural guitar. But I listened to that first album, and recently I listened to it, was super fan. And I said, you know, his guitar parts almost sound like they're keyboard parts, the way they sound and the way they're played. And you had mentioned that there was definitely some tension between him and the keyboard player, Nick Rhodes, and that potentially Nick Rhodes might have buried his guitar under the keyboards to make it sound more like keyboards. Who knows? But that's apparently why, even after years later, when he did a reunion album with them, he left right after it again, apparently. But yeah, a cool rock album. Always enjoyed this one. And finally, we have one more here we're going to look at. And this was one, I originally, of course, got it on vinyl back in the day, used. Later on, replaced it with a CD. And not long ago, I was at Rhino Records, and I found a used copy of it for pretty inexpensive, $6.99. Bought it, did a CD versus vinyl comparison with it. Even though there was definitely some snap and crackle on it, I still thought it was a better listening experience than the CD version. And I did a video on it. You can watch that one. But the album is Wings, Venus and Mars. After listening to that copy that was, like I said, it was $6.99. And given the price of vinyl nowadays, that was a cheap price for that one. Wasn't expecting the moon and the stars. The album sounded good. Definitely had some snap and crackle. I was expecting that. Still thought it was a better experience than the CD. And it was enough to convince me that next time, if I get a chance to upgrade and get a better copy, I'm going to. And I saw this copy here. Physically, as far as the cover and everything, in much better condition. But the important thing, of course, is the record. And of course, the version I picked up at Rhino, this was very ragged, this cardboard cover. There were splits, even though it was cardboard, there were splits in the seam here. Pulled out the record and looked at it. Instantly could see the record was in much nicer shape, much cleaner. And also this came, I'm pretty sure it's come with all the inserts. Now, once again, the inserts to me aren't as important as just the record, but this just happened to come with everything. And the record was clean. It has this sticker here, which the Rhino one I picked up about a year ago didn't look like this. Maybe it was even less than a year ago. It had both of the posters here. The posters are included. I'm not going to unfold these right now. And I think those were all the Gugas that came with it. But yeah, nice copy. The vinyl was really clean. It was more expensive, of course. That's to be expected. But I was very pleased. And I'm going to look forward to hearing this one. Give it a quick cleaning and rip it. And I feel pretty confident this is going to sound better than the copy I picked up a while back. I'll let that copy go, and this will be my upgrade here. But yeah, so all in all, it was a good experience at this store. The owner was very nice, and of course he was doing 20% off on the weekend. It was just that weekend only. He'll probably might do sales in the future, who knows. Probably spent a little bit more than I should have, but then I always say that. And I'll stay away probably for a couple weeks. You're giving me
right.
She's giving me a smart look right now. Like, sure you are. But yeah, overall, I'd say...
We are going to Rhino this weekend, you said?
Well, yes. Rhino Records closed. They're reopening a new location. They are going to be reopening this weekend. I will take a look. Doesn't mean I'm going to go crazy or anything, but I will definitely go there for their opening. I'm glad they're going to be back because they've been away for a while. So anyways, though, but that's the haul. Let me know what you've picked up lately. And of course, as always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon. And also, I want to give a big thank you to the Patreon supporters.
You're fierce and mighty.
Thank you, Superfan. Patreon supporters receive exclusive weekly videos that are not available here on the channel. They oftentimes will receive advance videos in advance of the channel. And anyways, if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, go to patreon.com/TJR the original. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Just really appreciate you stopping by and spending time here. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.